Hello, my name is Voya and welcome to my deep guide. Reinkstone R1. That's a tablet that is creating a little bit of a buzz in the past couple of weeks or even a month online, especially on the Facebook group that they have. And while it's quite interesting, we didn't have that much information to begin with. However, over time, on the Facebook, the activity of the Reinkstone person or group, I don't know how many people are managing that. Over time, we got more and a little bit more and a little bit more information about what Reinkstone R1 is. So I wanted to summarize all of that information that's a little bit all over the place and draw some conclusions. So let's start. First of all, what is Reinkstone R1? Well, it is a 10.1-inch color e-paper tablet, not e-ink, but e-paper. Why is this important? Well, unlike so many other products on the market out there today, the majority of them are using e-ink screens. Reinkstone R1 is not. Reinkstone seems to have developed their own color e-paper screen, which right off the bat makes it very, very interesting. Let's talk a little bit about the design. Well, the first thing that you can notice about the R1 is the fact that that wider edge or the wider side, which is associated now with so many products, it's a necessary thing to have because that's where all of the electronics are. That's why tablets can be now thinner, and that's how the panels are organized. However, while e-ink panels have the electronics on the longer side of the panel, the Reink paper screen has the electronics apparently on the shorter side of the panel. That right off the bat gives the Reinkstone R1 a slightly more unique and a more recognizable look. Aside from that, it looks very nice. It looks like a modern type of a tablet. It says that it has an aluminum alloy body, which makes it probably feel modern, but also a little bit fragile because, as we know from Remarkable and the Note Air, these devices tend to be, while more rigid and definitely more sexy and more high-class feeling, they do tend to be a little bit more fragile. The dimensions are normal, everything within what you would expect from a 10.1-inch tablet, with a notable exception that it's 6.8 millimeters thick. Well, that's not the 4.7 millimeters or the 5.7 millimeters of the Remarkable 2 or Note Air, respectively. But the 6.8 millimeters is a nice figure and it promises to deliver something that actually feels nice and comfortable, especially when you pair it with the fact that it weighs only 390 grams, which is definitely lighter than the Note Air. So those things seem to be quite good. It also looks like, from the promo images that we can see on their website, that the Reinkstone R1 might be coming in two colors, because we have two colors displayed here. The blue one, which is prominent everywhere, but we also see the gray one, which I really, really like. So the outsides look nice. What about the insides? What does it have on the inside? Well, it's powered by a quad-core 1.8 GHz CPU, which has 4 GB of RAM at its disposal, and it has 64 GB of ROM or storage capacity. It doesn't say that it's expandable, and I doubt that it's expandable, but even so, I mean, you got 64 GB, that's plenty. To power all of this kind of powerful goodness, we have a battery that's at 4,500 milliamps. Now that's really, really a lot. And I don't know how they managed to actually squeeze out 390 grams and have such a massive battery and 6.8 millimeters. So when you put into context the sheer amount of batteries that this thing has, then these two things, the weight and the thickness, they come into a different spotlight for me, and it's quite an interesting engineering feat that they managed to achieve. Now, the main thing is, of course, the screen, and the screen is not fitting any of the standards that we are used to so far. So first of all, it's not 10.3 inch, it's 10.1 inches. The second thing is that it's not an e-ink screen, it's their own, they call it Reink Screen, and it does have a front light, which is also, they call it their own, which is called natural low light. I don't know if it's gonna have dual colors or anything like that. That remains to be seen, but it does have a front light and it is their own screen panel. Now those 10.1 inches we saw on Lightbook P1, that translated into lower resolution and lower PPI. Not so on the Reinkstone R1, because it runs the resolution of 1680 by 2232, which results in 300 PPI on a 10-inch device. Now this is a first, because so far all of the e-ink 10.3-inch panels run the same resolution, which means that they're always at 227 ppi. This is the first time that we're seeing a 10-inch panel that's running 300 ppi black and white content. Please keep that in mind. And interestingly enough, the color resolution, or the density of the color resolution, is 140 ppi, unlike the 100 ppi that we see on the Nova 3 Color, for example, because that panel also has the same 300 black and white, but it does have 100 ppi for the color. This one has more. So that's going to be very, very interesting as well to see, to put it under the microscope and see what did they do. And what kind of solution did they employ here to get the colors? The speed of the panel seems to be standard, which is around 2 frames per second at high quality and 7-8 frames per second at in A2 mode. Now, I am not a fan of characterizing e-ink or e-paper displays in frames per second, because that's a little bit silly, but that's what they say, so here it is. Far more interestingly is the writing latency, which is reported to be at around 40 milliseconds for black and white content and around 50 milliseconds for the color content. Now, if we take that into consideration and compare with the Desta results that I had from before, that means that the Reinkstone R1 writing latency should fit comfortably within the better standard of eNote taking devices, because everything underneath 50 milliseconds is really, really good. Now the pen is 4096 levels of pressure sensitivity, but that doesn't really mean much until you hold it in a hand and you see how that pressure sensitivity has been calibrated, implemented, etc., etc. Because we've seen plenty examples where a pen can have, as many pressure sensitivity levels as you want, but if that's not handled correctly, they're not at your disposal. It's just a number and a potential at this point. However, it does say that the pen is magnetic and that it, I assume, is used to be slapped on the side or somewhere on the device. Now, the interesting part here is, again, back to the design, where the Reinkstone has flat edges, which is a good thing because you have more of a magnetic surface to hold on to that pen in a better way, which is certainly not the case with the eNote Air, because it has those rounded edges, and yeah, it just didn't really work that well out the box. Reinkstone R1 also has built-in stereo speakers, so 2 speakers, built-in stereo microphones, so 2 microphones, Wi-Fi, I assume both 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, Bluetooth, doesn't say which standard, USB-C with OTG, and really, really nice and handy, a G sensor, which enables auto orientation on the device. All of these things sound very, very good, really interesting, and a little bit impressive. The only thing that's a little bit lower for a device of this kind of specs is the CPU, because it would have been nicer if it was a Snapdragon, an octa-core Snapdragon of some sort, but this should also be able to handle things okay. And to top it all off, Reinkstone R1 is running Android 11, which is the latest and greatest of all. Well, that's a different discussion, but let's just, go focus on this. That's great, right? You can run all of the apps because, as they say, it's unlimited. You can run so many apps and all of these kinds of things. Well, not quite so, because you see, even though it's running on Android 11, it seems that it's not going to have a Google Play Store. Go figure. Instead, they're saying that it's going to have a good e-reader app store, which I've absolutely never heard of. I mean, I've heard of good e-reader, but I didn't have any idea or any clue that they have an app store. So I have zero idea if it's good or not, if that means that it's good or not. But what I do know is that for sure, what this means is that you will not have an unlimited device, as they are saying on their website, simply because if you don't have a Google Play Store, that's a limitation right there. But it does say that you will have Kindle app, manga apps, news apps, magazine apps, note-taking apps, plural, Interesting. And that you will have searchable files and books. Okay. However, there is no mention whatsoever of whether or not the device will have handwriting recognition, or I might have missed it if it was mentioned in the Facebook group. If I did, please do correct me in the comments below. And I'm not aware of if there's going to be an option of searching your handwritten notes. The product is not even in the stage of Kickstarter campaign. Yet they have this pre-order campaign running, which is you reserve your spot by giving $1, and that secures you a spot, in this case for the early bird campaign, to be able to pre-order the device when the Kickstarter campaign comes for the price of $379 US. And that is a 31% off from the listed price, which is supposed to be $550. So that's how that whole thing seems to be working. You put $1 in to reserve your spot for pre-order at a certain tier level. Okay, that kind of is a little bit weird, but all right, fine. What about the Kickstarter campaign then? Well, when does it start? No idea. They haven't actually specified that, which I find a little bit strange because of the next bit of info, which is that their targeted release is in November of this year, 2021. Now, November is much closer than you think it is, even now in June, and that time is gonna go in a snap, and there's a hell of a lot of stuff and logistics left to go through to actually go from through all of these things, and more on that a little bit later. But yeah, this point, November and the Kickstarter campaign, they're just a little bit like just doesn't make too much sense to me at this point. So that's what we know so far about the Reinkstone R1. What are my thoughts about this whole thing? Well, I think that it looks really, really good. I like the design and the way it looks. I think that the specifications are very, very good. They would be excellent if there was an octa-core CPU inside, but even so, I think they're very competitive and very, very good. But a lot of it will come down to simply the performance and the quality of that screen, because it's their own screen and it's a brand new thing. So you don't know what their capacity is, of what their quality control is, and how that whole thing is going to turn out when you ramp it up into mass production scale, not just a 1, 2, or 10 prototype devices or panels. So my main questions about the screen are, what are the reading, writing, ghosting, and the front light performance gonna be like? Now, they have released 3 demo videos to prove that the device exists and that this whole thing is not a scam or anything like that, which is a good thing. It's really good to actually see the device, the prototype, working and doing its thing in a very kind of non-marketing type of setting, which I really do appreciate. However, those videos are shot by a camera that's kind of strapped onto the head, and they're uploaded at 480p, and coupled with the YouTube compression, you really lose a lot of details, so you can't see that much as far as the image quality of the screen goes. I will take those videos with a lot of reserve because of the before mentioned compression and video quality, and it simply doesn't contain enough picture information data to actually show the finer details that I'm very much interested in. And the 2 most important ones for me are the interpretation of the shading of the colors, because the display panel is 4096 colors, so basically 4 bits, which means that the device will somehow need to convert 24, 16, or 8-bit images that needs to handle into 4 bits. Now, why is this problematic? Well, because you get the color banding or artifacts, so to speak. And when you convert from 16 million colors down to 4096 colors, that means that you will have some unpleasing results. Now, there is a way to combat that, and it's called dithering. But there are different ways that you can employ or implement a dither method. The cheapest and the fastest one is the nearest color method, which unfortunately looks ugly for colors, but it retains a lot of information as far as sharpness and details go. So good for the text, really bad for the images. And it remains to be seen, are they going to implement that, or are they going to implement an ordered dithering or even more advanced methods which are always better, but some of them can actually have a detrimental effect on the crispness and sharpness of the text. So that's the part that I can't see from the images there. But what I can see is that we do have color banding, and that it looks like that it's not as smooth as Kobo-Lipsa, for example. Now, this color dithering is something that you can see on many devices, and I think one of the best examples that I can show is the Books platform, so my eNote Air, because it employs different dithering methods between different screen modes. So in a normal screen mode, you will see that the text is super sharp and the sharpness overall is really good, but you get that color banding, which is definitely not pleasing to look at. However, when you switch to speed mode, suddenly, magically, the color banding is completely gone, and now you have very smooth shading, but the texts themselves and the sharpness of the text, the edges of the text is gone. So that's the detrimental effect of that particular implementation method. But it clearly shows the difference and the impact that dithering methods can have on how an image is interpreted. Now, the second thing that I'm really interested in the screen performance of the Reinkstone R1 is the ghosting artifacts or the ghosting performance, especially when going from a text page onto an image page. Those are usually very difficult for the screens to handle, and you will have, more often than not, you will see the ghosting remnants of the text on the image after a page swap. And while the videos are not great, even at that resolution and even at that quality, we can clearly see that there's quite a bit of ghosting happening there. Now, it doesn't look like it's as prominent as it was on Nova 3 Color, but it does look that it's a little bit more prominent than what I have, for example, on the Note Air. So ghosting definitely is present, but it remains to be seen to what extent and how it can be remedied. So those are the things that we can kind of see from the videos, but what can we definitely see from the videos that are provided? Well, we can see the following. First and most important for me is that the prototype device exists. The second thing that's really important for me to see is that the screen works and it's implemented into a device and that it's a reality. As I mentioned, the quality I can't comment on because of the low quality and low resolution of the videos, but the screen does exist. Another thing that we can also see from the videos is that the screen surface seems to be, at least in the prototype, very reflective. Now, I don't know if there's going to be an anti-glare screen protector that comes on top or anything like that, but what we can see in a couple of examples here in the videos is that the screen surface is quite reflective. We can also see that the full page flipping of the images is actually quite slow. And there's two things that are quite slow. The first is the responsiveness of the device, because you can see the user is tapping the screen, the finger lifts, then we have almost like a full second. I don't know, I'm going to measure out, but it feels like it's almost a full second before the device even starts to refresh and display the other image. Now, this could be due to the loading times, and that basically it just needs to load the next page into memory, and since it's a full image, that's what takes time, and only once it's loaded the entire thing into its memory, then it's ready to display. So we have these two kind of time things that I'm interested in, which is first the loading time of the next page image, and the second one is the time that it takes for the device to fully refresh the page. Now, I wouldn't be me if I didn't actually spend time in research and manage to find the exact same magazine/document that is used in the demo that they used in the Reinkstone R1, and show it off in the different devices that I have here to compare that performance and the refresh speed. So that's exactly what I'm gonna do. I managed to find the document and I have it. So now let's cue in the footage and the calculations from the future where I compare the performance of flipping the exact same pages on all of these three devices and see how they compare. 3, 2, 1, go. All right, so here we have that same magazine or the same document that has been used in the Reinkstone R1 demo. And we have on the right hand side we have our my books Note Air, and on the left side we have the Kobo Ellipsa. Note Air is running in normal refresh mode, so highest quality and all that kind of stuff. And already now you should be able to see, even in this image, even though this is very subtle, but this is the dithering or the lack of dithering that I've been talking about. So this is the color banding where the conversion is not done properly. And here on Kobo Ellipsa you can see that we have definitely some sort of filtering and dithering going on, so that you do not have this horrible looking color banding. We do see that color banding, unfortunately, on the Reinkstone R1, and yeah, it just remains to be seen up to what degree. Now let's see the performance of these two, and then I'm going to compare with what we saw performance on the video, because I'm going to assume it's real time. So let's just do boop. As expected, Note Air is a little bit faster from what I saw, because it has an 8-core CPU. This has a quad-core CPU. In fact, I believe it's the same CPU that the Reinkstone R1 has. And here we have the example that I really wanted to see. This page is excellent because we also see that page on the Reinkstone as well, and you can see that performance of how the redrawing is, and the performance of ghosting and color banding. So on the Note Air, you can actually see color banding happening, and the ghosting is here because you can see a little bit of text remaining. So let's just bring it closer so that you can see. So that's the ghosting that I'm talking about, and you can see the color banding definitely happening here quite strongly around the lady in the boat. Now let's contrast that with the performance of the Kobo Ellipsa. So while some ghosting is there, it is quite a lot less than on the Note Air. And as far as the color banding goes, we don't have any actually going on. So much so that if I move it here, the camera is going to get confused because there's no sharp lines for the autofocus to figure it out. So that's basically the difference here. So I'm expecting that the performance of the Reinkstone, from what I see on the example videos, it more resembles what I see on the Note Air than what I see on the Kobo Ellipsa. And again, the Kobo Ellipsa, just that display and how it's refreshed and how it's handled is really spectacular. But that's it for the digression. Let's go back to Reinkstone. I have no idea at this point what the results are, so that's going to be interesting to see. Now let's move on. From the material that we so far have, we really can't see proper examples of writing. We only have two examples. One example is just writing a kind of sketchy doodle D, and it's really large and it's under an angle, and you can't see the precision of the screen, you can't see the precision of the pen, you can't see the precision of the pressure sensitivity, none of those things. It's just a scribble that doesn't mean anything to me really, other than that the pen reacts with the screen. That's all we can see. The second example is the coloring example, where it actually shows some problems, and the problems are the pressure sensitivity, because it seems like it's not that sophisticated as far as pressure sensitivity goes. Now that's a purely software kind of a thing, so yeah, it's all that's something that can be changed from now until November, if that ever gets released in November, so many times. So yeah, I'm just saying what I'm seeing now, but it's a super early prototype, so it really doesn't matter. What we can see is that the pen reacts with the screen, and you can do black strokes and you can do color strokes, but we really don't see anything more than that. Now, one of the videos also shows a really important thing for people who understand development, and that is the device power up from power off to power on state, booting into its OS environment with the UI and everything else, and shutting down. Why is this important? Because it shows that the system, the firmware, and the drivers are all in place, implemented, and functioning as they should. So that's a really, really important thing, and a really, really good thing to see that they've actually showed that. So I like that. One thing that I don't like is that there are two editing cuts in the power up procedure. Here's one cut where you can definitely see, the editing was done, and there's a little bit more subtle one, but it's definitely there as well. I'm cautioned by this. I'm not alarmed. I'm simply cautioned by this because a cut can mean anything. It can be as innocent as wanting to cut down the impression of the boot up time and nothing else, which I personally think is the case. Or it could mean something more and different. Personally, I really don't think that it's anything more nefarious than them simply not being comfortable by the boot up time that the system had. So they wanted to kind of, show it that it boots up a little bit quicker than it does, because maybe they know that, oh, we need to optimize this and it's going to boot up like this, and it's like that. And from the videos, we can definitely see that the design is exactly the same as on the rendered images and on the promotional images, which is great. The design looks great. The build quality, I don't know, it looks okay. There's nothing like terribly wrong from here, what we can see, but again, bad quality and all that kind of stuff. And yep, it has okay specs and it's able to navigate around the system. So what's my overall impression of the Reinkstone R1, what we know so far, which is still really, really early? Well, I think that it sounds very, very promising. And in some instances, it sounds almost too good to be true. Now, whenever I run into anything that even comes close to the too good to be true category, I have a bunch of alarm bells going on, and yeah, it just triggers more research and a little bit more kind of active interest into this kind of thing and a little bit more caution. And there was one thing that bothered me from the very beginning regarding the Reinkstone R1, and that is of all things, the name of the YouTube channel where these unlisted videos are that have been issued for the people who reserved their spot in the Kickstarter campaign. So that YouTube channel looks like it's a hub for various seemingly different Chinese Kickstarter projects, and they range from screens to vaporizers to knife holders and watches and all sorts of stuff. So very, very different types of startups. The oldest product that I could find was 12 months ago. So very, very new and very, very fresh. That part kind of makes sense, that you have like one localized hub that will help promote Kickstarter campaigns or crowdfunding campaigns from different producers. So that's fine. I don't have any problems with that. However, where I started to have some problems is when I started to dig in and research the performance of the past projects. There are 55 projects listed there, and I couldn't really go through all of them. My shoulder is still recovering, and I didn't really want to go and through all of that clicking, so it's still really, really difficult to do that. But I did 15 of them. So I did, all the oldest ones, a little bit from the middle, and the newest ones, just to kind of try and get an average out of this. 10 out of those 15 were outright scams, or the end product was basically, the backers were receiving dysfunctional products or malfunctioned or ripped jackets, and you name it, it was there. They were not successful and not recommended crowdfunding campaigns. Now, the 5 other ones seemed normal and successful, where the product was developed, it was delivered, and users were happy. Now, I don't know what the rest of the 40 projects are like. As I said, I didn't have time or the energy to actually go through all of that. But even if we took these figures that we have, we still assumed that all of the remaining ones were perfect and blisteringly awesome campaigns where everybody was happy, which is a little bit unlikely, but let's run with that. Then you would still end up with 18% of scam or completely dysfunctional projects that were there. And chances that it remains at just that 18% are very, very low. So if you're interested, you can go through all of these and just check out and see the comments in the community and all that kind of stuff, and kind of see what the track record of the projects listed on that channel are. Does that automatically mean that Reinkstone R1 is a scam and we should all take our pitchforks and, torches and just burn it all to the ground? No, I really don't think that this is a scam. I'm not worried about that at all. To me, this looks like a genuine startup project where basically they're just trying to get their stuff together in time, and they're trying to get a project that they seem to be believing in. So that's my impression of the Reinkstone R1 campaign and the project if I don't take it into context. When I put it into context of that channel, then I'm a little bit like, uneasy, but I still don't really go towards that whole, this is a scam and a robbery thingy, but it does give me enough worry to be cautious and careful, just a little bit careful about this until we get more data, until we get more information, because I think one of the things that would help a lot to alleviate any kind of doubt whether or not this is something that people can fully, jump back behind or not, is if the Reinkstone would simply publish information about us, who they are, the team, who are the people behind this product. That will make it a lot easier to associate with, because then there's these people are working behind this. It's not a Chinese company entity, it's actually a team. And I think that's a very important distinction to make between these things. And the second thing that I think is going to be vital is to maintain communication lines and frequency. Now that's something that I don't have so far, so that's another one that we go a little bit on the other side, because I wrote to them, of course introducing myself and requesting a review unit, because they have like a link mail for where to send an email to request a review unit, and I did that, but never heard back, not even a reply or a rejection. I mean, that to me is not a good thing. These things should be improved. We need to know who the team is behind this, and we need to have better communication behind this whole thing. And if those two things are in place, and then I believe that people who have some anxieties in relation to legitimacy of this whole project, or the likelihood of this project, I think those would alleviate quite quickly. As I said, I'm not personally worried about the legitimacy of the project. I believe that is real, that we see the real prototype there, and that they're trying to get it together and get it to run. Now, the part that does worry me is that other one, trying to make it work and trying to make it happen. Realistically, I don't see this device shipping in November. If we factor in that we already now, even during summer, we have new COVID-19 strains popping up, and they're causing even further shortages of the superconductors, which are already, crippling all of the productions for now a half a year and more. The situation when we actually get closer to the madness in the Q4, it's just gonna be worse, not better. And when things are like that, where you have a vital component being in a general shortage, that means that the giants, the production giants, car manufacturers, TV manufacturers, phone manufacturers, washing machine manufacturers, everything that you own uses superconductors, and all of them are in a backlog, and all of those giants are basically gonna have priority over any kind of a Kickstarter campaign project. So that again is another thing that has to be taken into account, that will that has a very strong potential to push back that November deadline into 2022. Also, if you factor in that Q4 is the most demanding quarter of the year for consumer products because of the Cyber Monday, Black Friday, and the Christmas and all that kind of stuff, that means that these consumer giants that naturally have a priority over the superconductors that are already, in high demand and short in supply, that just means that the smaller projects and smaller teams will be forced to deal with what's left after the big guys are done. And we already saw how that affects companies that I love, for example, Arata and their SuperNote A5X. They've directly had an impact from that because their scheduled production of new units was completely delayed and pushed back because of the superconductor shortages. And yeah, they were in a situation where they were sold out and they were kind of had to twiddle their thumbs because there's nothing they can do. There's nothing you can do if you're in that position except wait. And we're talking about a fully fledged, done product, production line ready, everything is ready. And even so, they had, I don't know how many, but I think a couple of months of delay. So that's a very practical and a real world example of what I'm talking about. So what is the bottom line? Well, the Reinkstone R1 is most definitely an interesting device. Now, the line that keeps popping up is, it looks too good to be true. Well, I disagree. I think that it looks too good to be true only if you don't look closely enough. If you do look closely enough, then it will look like a potentially very interesting device with way too many unanswered questions to draw upon any definitive conclusions and already some shortcomings, which altogether, when you pack it up, makes it a realistic proposition and a realistic device. Not an imaginary thing that is just perfect in every way. Absolutely not. But is it interesting? Yeah, very much so. I would certainly find it really, really interesting to take a closer look at the device and yeah, give it fair shakedown and fair due to see what's it about. Because yeah, I'm most definitely interested, if for nothing else, then for the new screen panel and those 300 ppi on a 10-inch, I really would like to see how that actually works in reality. As far as when I expect this device to be done, absolutely not by November 2021. I really, really don't think that's a realistic option at all. If I need to guess, I would venture a guess maybe at the absolute best scenario, March, April 2022. Now, don't get me wrong. I sincerely hope that I'm wrong and that we actually do get it in November, which would be excellent because I'm very interested by the device. I want to get it as much as you do, but I also want to live in reality, not just in an imagination land. So for me, the reality is, I believe, Q1, if we're lucky, of 2022, or maybe the passage between Q1 and Q2 of 2022. But only time will tell when we will see the Reinkstone R1. I'm interested to hear your thoughts and your kind of thinking about this whole thing, especially after sharing all of this information with you, some of which some users may not have been aware of or anything like that. And also, yeah, just contribute to the discussion down below. It's going to be interesting to actually see and yeah, to see what people think, what they expect. And I think that's also going to be a valuable resource for the Reinkstone team, so that they can actually hear back directly from the potential users and the potential customer base. What are the expectations? What are the priorities, so that they can, you know, kind of reshuffle their priorities and focus on that kind of stuff to get it right. I hope you liked the video. If you did, please like and subscribe and ding the notification bell to get notified when new videos come out on my deep guide. Also, check out the link down below. If you haven't heard or you haven't checked it out, I've made a My Daily Organizer, it's called, and it's a organizer for the year 2021. It's a year calendar, weekly, quarterly, daily organizer that has a lot of features. So just check out the playlist down below. Has good videos that explain and kind of is this product for you or not. It's mainly aimed for SuperNote books and Remarkable tablets, so that's the main stuff that's actually supported, but it might work on other ones. However, yeah, you have to actually check that beforehand. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, and see you in the next video. Bye.